Alright boys, so Yang is now on the NA version of the game where she is coming out when this video comes out. But regardless, I'm going to be making a video telling you everything you need to know about Yang because I know a lot of people are looking forward to this servant coming back. Maybe you missed her during New Year's, and rightfully so. Going for this servant is a really good option because, you know, Castoria just came out. And Yang, being a foreigner, pretty much gives you your all-in-one package for your single target arts DPS servant. Now, funny enough, MHXX is also on this banner as well, and they both kind of do the same thing, but you could maybe say that Yang is a bit more well-rounded as a servant. But realistically, if you snag either one of them, you're going to be pretty set. So this video is going to be talking about Yang, and then I'll probably do a video on MHXX tomorrow. However, before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for daily FGO content. Also, if you need another heaping helping of ZTL content, I do stream every weekday over on my Twitch, that usually being FGO. So if you want to see me play FGO and, you know, grind events or get crushed by bosses, then by all means, follow the Twitch. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into Yang, starting off with her hits. And Yang's hits are actually really strong. They're kind of what you would want for an arts DPS servant. You've got insanely high hits on both her arts and quick cards at 4 apiece, and her natural star gen and NP gain are both pretty solid, although the NP gain you could say is a bit on the lower side. The fact that the hits are a bit higher, and that you can actually generate a decent bit of stars with some of her skills and her own quick cards means that you should be able to nab some crits on those arts cards and actually get some decent refund back. Also, even if you're not able to do that, Yang does have skills that do help her out when it comes to her own NP gain. Not to also mention that she's a foreigner, which means she also has a passive skill that refunds 2 stars every single turn, which might not sound like a lot, but it does kind of add up in certain Brave chains where maybe you generated like 28 stars, it kicks you up to 30. That's now 3 crits you're going to be able to do, assuming that Yang gets all of those stars. But being a foreigner, her natural star weight is insanely high, so she really shouldn't be having to like fight the casters or whoever else is in your party for any of those stars. But let's actually start moving into some of the skills for Yang because her hits are just actually pretty good, but the skills are what pay the bills when it comes to the servant. So starting off with her first skill, this actually just got buffed, and it's giving her a lot of just really good stuff. First and foremost, it almost serves as a way to protect the party because it's giving her invincibility for a turn, but then also drawing the attention of all enemies to herself or taunting them for that same turn as well, meaning that not only is Yang going to be protecting herself, but the rest of your party members, as long as the enemies don't have like buff removal or pierce invincibility or something along those lines, are going to be safe. And it just makes the arts team that already has a lot of survivability even better because Castoria has the solemn defense and the targetable invincibility. But now you've also got Yang who could take the heat off of your other supports or maybe any other DPSs you have. And that's already insane utility to bring to the party. But then she's also kind of shoring up her NP gain and her stars by giving herself 10% NP every single turn for 3 turns and bombing 25 stars on the board, and this is all on a decent 6-turn cooldown. So this just gives Yang a lot to work with right off the bat. The only criticism you could maybe say is that while it is the survivability, you do want to kind of fire this off immediately because you want to have that NP refund every single turn, and you do probably want to start firing off some crits with those stars. So maybe you could say it's a little counterproductive to have a skill that you always want up to also have her survivability, but with how strong the skill is, I think that's kind of like a light criticism to throw her way. And overall, it's just an insanely strong start to an insanely strong servant. Then we move over to her second skill, which is kind of ridiculous now that we can actually fight like 6 people at once, because basically Yang is going to steal 1 tick of all of your enemies, right? And she's going to get 20% battery for each person that she stole from, right? So if you're fighting 1 person, you know, she's going to take 20%. If she's fighting 3 people, she's going to take 60%. And if you're fighting 6 people, she's going to take 120%, which gets a little ridiculous. Now, I don't know why you would bring Yang to like a 1v6 fight, but hey, maybe we're going to get some like really insane boss fight that she's going to be good for. And you could just bring her to that and basically have an over 100% battery, right? The only unfortunate thing about this is that Yang being a DPS and most bosses only having like maybe 1, maybe 2 enemies, right? Means that this is only really going to be like a 20 to 40% battery, but that's still really good considering that Castoria is already giving you a lot of NP and that's who you're probably going to be using with Yang. And she's also got the NP every single turn. So even though like most of the time it's probably just going to be like a 20 to 40% battery, it's still really, really strong. But that's not all that it does. It also has a small little damage buff for her as well by reducing their defense by 20% for 3 turns on a 7-turn cooldown. So already for Yang, we have a way for her to protect herself, protect the party, shore up her NP gain and her stars, have access to an immediate battery, and she's also lowering the enemy's defense to increase her own damage. But also in a way, it increases the amount of damage that the party's going to be able to do because she's lowering their defense, which means other members of your party could take advantage of that as well. So already between her first and second skill, she's looking really, really strong, but the third skill is where things kind of get a little nutty over here, because she gives herself the Living Flame buff for 3 attacks for 3 turns, and basically this is going to mean that any enemy that attacks Yang is going to get burned, which is not good for them, as many people probably know from Yang's own NP, but we'll talk about that in just a second. But then it's also going to reduce the enemy's defense by 10% for 3 whole turns whenever they actually attack her, right? And you can stack this up to like 30% down, which is really, really strong. And then for whatever reason, she's just giving herself 20% defense for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. Like, if Yang needed to be any like more tanky or anything, they just gave her a little bit of extra defense and then just kind of daring the opponents to attack her, because they're like, yeah, go ahead, attack me, it's just going to give me infinitely more damage. Because I guess we'll get into the NP right now. Not only is all the defense lowering really good for her damage, but if you look at her overcharge, she has a special damage mod against burned enemies. And even if the enemies aren't attacking you, your first NP might be a little weak, right? Because, you know, nobody's burned or anything, but her NP does hit them with burn for 3 turns, so your next NP is pretty much guaranteed to do a lot of damage. So maybe you got a stubborn enemy that's like refusing to attack Yang or whatever. Maybe you're not using her taunt to like force them to all attack her or something along those lines. You can at least force it onto them with her NP, right? And that's when her damage actually starts to get kind of insane, because you'll notice on the little damage chart that her damage before she starts stacking any of this stuff down is not really super great, right? It's pretty low or like kind of average. But as soon as you start getting that burn going, and especially when you start lowering their defense with the third skill, right, that's when stuff really starts to get out of hand and Yang starts to look really, really strong. And it actually does give her an upside to, say, someone like MHXX, because MHXX can do a lot more damage than someone like Yang, but MHXX loses a lot of her power because her 50% attack buff is only for 1 turn, so her damage goes down a lot, whereas Yang is going to be very consistent with her damage because the burn special damage mod is built into her NP, and anytime the enemy attacks her, they're going to get burned, and anytime she attacks the enemy, she's going to smack them with 3 turns of burn, so she'll always pretty much have somebody burned. And the nice thing is that this is not like any specific special damage mod, it is just burning them, right? It's why, like, say, Summer Kama is so good with like the charm down, right? Because you can just smack that onto anybody. It's not really reliant on any one trait. Like, it's not, oh, they're like a chaotic character or they have the man attribute or something along those lines, right? It's just something you could do to anybody as long as they can be debuffed. Now, certain bosses that have like debuff immunity or something, yeah, they can kind of ruin Yang's style of gameplay because she can't lower their defense and like she can't burn them or anything, but that's like very specific, few and far between bosses, right? Most of them aren't just like completely immune to all debuffs. They have like certain debuffs, or like maybe they have high debuff resistance, which might be a little annoying for Yang, but Yang's pretty persistent in, you know, trying to smack the enemy with burns with both her third skill and her NP, so you'll definitely get it at some point. What I'm trying to say is that Yang is an insanely good servant. When she first came out on the JP version of the game, she was one of those servants that I wasn't exactly sure how broken she was going to be, because she looked really good on paper, but also really reliant on debuffs, but she does work a lot for a lot of boss fights, right? In fact, she's one of the few servants, ironically enough, that's just good for the Serranos fight. Not many servants are really good into that fight because it's just so ridiculous. But she is just one of those servants that can just obliterate him quick, fast, and in a hurry. And the more and more that I use her over on the JP version of the game, the more and more I'm like, man, I really want to get this servant, so I'm probably going to be summoning for her when she's on solo raid up with MHXX. That being said, kind of determine what you want to spend your Saint Quartz are, because do keep in mind that this is like the bait beginning banner before Van Gogh comes out. I know a lot of people are super excited for Yang, but also remember that Van Gogh is like the next banner. If you're excited for Nemo, he also comes out. Then you got like Ibuki coming out. Then you're gonna have Domen's gonna come out as well. Like you have a lot of like hype servants. Muramasa at the end of the year. Then like Space Ishtar, and then, you know, shortly after that, well, I would say shortly, but maybe a couple months after that, then Lost Belt 6, which is going to be absolutely ridiculous. So if you're leaning more on like the free-to-play side of the game, I would definitely kind of just judge if you want to summon on the banner or not. Also keep in mind that if you just wait a couple of days, Yang will go on solo right up with the different 4-stars, and that's going to cycle for a little bit. So if you want Fran more than you want Raiko or MHXX, you can wait for the day that Fran and Yang go on a banner together, right? Don't forget about all of that. But with all that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.